please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hello and welcome to Your Stocks. I'm Nigel D'Souza and with me is Ekta Batra. And as we speak, the Nifty is virtually at the low point of the day. Keep an eye out on the Nifty Bank. That's taken a bit of a knock. But the real index that you should be looking at is the PSU banking index. So let's pull that one up for you. You have a lot of stocks that have taken a hard knock in the last 20 minutes or so. PNB has moved to the low point of the day. Allahabad Bank as well is struggling. And all those banks really, now they're flashing for you on the screen as well. The PSU banking index, after seeing such a sharp correction, it's taking a harder knock as we speak. Things are not looking too good, but at least the Nifty is holding on to the 10,550 odd mark. Ekta.
Hi Nigel. Yes, absolutely. It's all about the banks this afternoon again. But besides that, we have other stocks which are in focus as well. So, for example, Sun Pharmaceuticals, which is now back at the low point of the day. It's lost around 4% this week. That is between yesterday and today at current reckoning. Remember that the Halol inspection got over on Friday, received 3 observations. So, maybe there is some amount of nervousness ahead of what those observations could contain. That stock is lower. And like Nigel mentioned, it is all about the banks. So, State Bank of India with a knock of around 2.5%. It's lost 13.5% this year. ICICI Bank, which is down around 2% at this point in time, is just about 2 percentage points away from slipping into the red in terms of the entire year's performance. So that just gives you a sense in terms of what's happening for the financials, and even something like an HDFC, which is quite pressured. Top stories that we're tracking this afternoon, and we have Sharmila Joshi joining in to talk about all of the fundamentals of all the queries that we get, and we have Rajat Bose on the technicals. Sharmila as well as Rajat, thanks very much for joining in. Well, let's get going in terms of the first question that we have. Ajit Singh calls us from Haryana with a question. He has investments in PNB. Hi Ajit.
Good afternoon, madam. My name is Ajit Singh Atri. I am a senior citizen. I bought 200 PNB shares about 2 months back at around 180 is the cost to me.
Okay.
Now the problem is that immediately thereafter there has been a spate of fraud, and the share has climbed down like anything. So I want to know, say, prospects of this share in the, say, another 12 months. I'm ready to hold it for 1 year or even 2 years, provided it is a long-term good bet. Kindly guide me.
Okay, fair enough. So, Sharmila, without further ado, we know exactly what Ajit is looking for. 1 to 2 years is his horizon to hold PNB, and he's obviously sitting on a loss. Didn't see all the bad news coming in for that one. So, what would you recommend? Do you think it can at least come back to his buy levels in the next 1 year?
Very honestly, at this point in time, it's very difficult to say, because maybe even as of yesterday, we thought that we had the sort of the worst number already with us, saying that the loss is limited to this. Today we have a new number. So I think the road ahead for PNB is definitely tough. It doesn't mean that they won't make it, but very honestly, sitting where we are today, I would not stick my neck out and say that yes, in 2 years you'll come back to the price that you bought at. But I do think that from here probably the downside is limited, so you can continue to hold the stock from that perspective. But having said that, I don't know whether 180 is possible in a year's time or not. I would think it's very difficult.
Okay, all right. Rajat, your take on PNB?
Well, Nigel, yesterday we had a record volume. I think more than 5 crore shares were traded in this stock, yet it did not create a panic bottom, and today we have a lower bottom and the stock is still going down. So chances are that you would see further lower levels. As of now, what I can see is that it has broken all support levels above 100, and now it is heading for lower levels, and it could actually test going forward 72 to about 69 on the downside, and it's a vertical fall. Where it would be arrested is anybody's guess. One thing I would like him to consider, that now that Sharmila has made it very clear that even for an analyst it is very difficult to envisage as to what could be the next revelation. So given that kind of a scenario, whatever money he is actually still having on the capital side, meaning selling at 100 level or 97, still some recovery. But suppose if he were to sell at 70, then 27 more rupees would have to be taken as a hit. So if I were in his shoes, I would be a senior citizen in 6 years' time, and I would have sold it. So it's up to him. It will be his choice.
Okay, all right. So that's the view coming in on PNB. We have another caller now. We have Pradeep Jain, who calls us from Mumbai with a question. He has investments in Strides Shasun. Hi, Pradeep.
Hi, good afternoon, Ekta.
Afternoon.
I am Pradeep Jain from Mumbai. I am holding 1,800 shares of Strides Shasun at an average price of 655 for last 4 years.
Okay.
And I am a long-term investor for the horizon of 5 to 7 years.
Oh.
So, what is your expert advice, whether to keep it or whether to sell it off in the market, or what should I do?
Okay, well, I can't advise you on what you should do for your holdings, Pradeep, but definitely Strides Shasun has had some launches in the US in the near term. And they have, shed off their API business. They do have a strong promoter in terms of Arun Kumar, who does manage the business in terms of a lot of M&E quite well. So that is something that, Strides is known for. But I'm going to let Sharmila answer the question in terms of whether he is a long-term investor and whether he should stick on. He has around 5 to 7 years in terms of a horizon for Strides. Do you think it can be a real money spinner?
So to just take off from what you said, they did sell off Eris Life Sciences as well as their API business earlier, and both these were sort of low margin businesses, not contributing too much to the revenue stream. And the fact that, to scale up, you would have had to invest substantially in these businesses. So in light of that, their restructuring, I think, was quite well received by the market. And they are, as Ekta said, concentrating on US, Australia, which are their better markets where they can expect to get better revenue. So, the strategy seems to be sorted. I think it's just that for pharma as a whole, we are seeing slightly, not really slightly, but the outlook for pharma has been quite muted in these last couple of years, given, what's happening with US FDA, as well as, recently the kind of price pressures that we've seen in the US. But given the fact that, you have such a long-term horizon, 5 to 7 years, and the fact that Strides Shasun is, sort of actively managing his portfolio and trying to structure it so that, they can optimize returns, I think that you can stay invested with that kind of a time horizon.
Okay, all right then. So that's the view coming in on Strides. Well, the markets are stabilizing. At least we are holding on to that mark of around 10,550. A couple of stocks that are moving high. I think IndusInd Bank is, pulled back a tad bit. NTPC continues to hold with a gain of around 1.5%.
Well, it's turning out to be definitely a very tough afternoon when it comes to the entire banking space. So, for example, we have SBI, like we've been pointing out, is now at the low point of the day, down around 2.7%. And ICICI Bank, which is exceeded in terms of losses, so it's down around 2% in terms of what's happening for ICICI. And even something like Axis, which is not doing anything great right now. Axis too is sulking. It's down around over 1.5%, 2% currently for Axis Bank as we speak. PNB has now gone to a 13% loss, so it's down 13.5% as we speak. Low point of the day for PNB, currently at around 97 odd rupees. And if you look at it, if you just chart what's happened to it, this month itself, it's fallen around 43 odd %. So that's what's happening there. And a lot of the PSU banks are now taking a fresh round of selling. So you can see that Bank of India is down 8 odd %, IDBI Bank is down 6.6%, Canara is down 4.7%, Indian Bank is down around 3.6%. So that gives you a sense in terms of the kind of selling that we're seeing for a couple of these banking stocks, PSU banking stocks in particular. But now we have another query. We have Amarnath, who writes to us from Chennai, wants to buy shares of Ashok Leyland for the short term and wants to know when is the right time to enter the market. Okay. Well, Rajat, what would you recommend on Ashok Leyland then? Short term?
See, I would say that either Mr. Amarnath waits for a dip to say something like level of 130. Close to that he can buy and put a stop loss below 128 and then hold on. Otherwise, it needs to take out 140 mark decisively. Once it does that, then it would become a fresh buy, as it would embark on a fresh uptrend. But given the current market scenario, that may be a little difficult, so it would be better to wait for a level close to 130 to buy Ashok Leyland.
Well, if you just take a look at the markets, you'll notice that some of these banking stocks that Ekta was talking about, they are getting a hard knock. So the market seems to be sensing something. But if you take a look at the markets, the Nifty, well, it's down only around 0.3%. So though you have the Nifty bank that's down close to around 1%, the Nifty is down only 0.3%. And that's because a couple of stocks are putting in a brave fight. Infosys, pull up the intraday chart over there. That stock is spiking up. HCL Tech as well is doing quite well. So a couple of these non-banking names, they are putting their hand up in there and they are getting counted. And that explains why at least we are holding on to the 10,550 mark. While otherwise, some of these stocks are taking a very, very hard knock. Even some of these private sector banks now are putting in a fight. IndusInd Bank, let's pull up the intraday chart over there. You have even Yes Bank that's doing a tad bit better. So keep an eye out on a couple of these stocks. IndusInd Bank and Yes Bank, we're talking about both those two stocks. Slip into a short break, come back, continue our focus on the markets, particularly the banking stocks. We'll continue answering all your queries. For some green, a couple of stocks in the broader market are providing you with that. So NCC Limited, that stock spikes up, and Tata Communications, that's the other stock that we're looking at. Intraday chart, if you're looking for some green, Infosys is providing it to you from the frontliners, and otherwise NCC Limited moves to the high point of the day. Tata Communications as well is moving quite well. That's up close to around 2.5%. So keep an eye out. Our director, I think, is pulling up Infosys quite a few times, but Tata Communications should be another one that we should get up for you on the screen. Well, we have Dilip who writes to us from Jaipur. He holds around 300 shares of Oriental Bank of Commerce at around 117 rupees since the last month or so. Short-term investor wants to know whether or not to hold or to sell it. Oh God, whoopsie daisy. Sharmila, you have a view on this one, or you would like to give it a pass?
I think I'd give it a pass, especially since it's a short-term view.
Short-term view. All right. Rajat, coming across to you, your take on OBC?
I mean, it's already well known that it is another stock that is falling, and that also posted the record volume yesterday, and yet it has not found a bottom. It is extremely weak. I would suggest that since it can fall even further, so it would be better to actually bail out of the stock, exit as early as possible. That should be the thing.
High beta is taking a bit of a hit as well. So Reliance Communication is down 5% odd. Oberoi Realty is down around 5% odd. Reliance Naval and Engineering is down 5.3%. So that gives you a sense in terms of what's happening for a couple of these high beta stocks. And Gitanjali Gems now a 22 rupees stock. So that stock is in lower circuit, just to point that out. But other stocks seem to be taking a bit of a hit from the broader markets as well. Currently, the Nifty is down 33 odd points, but the real culprit seems to be emerging within the Bank Nifty, which is down over around 270 points at this point in time. But we have Nagesh who writes to us from Hyderabad. He wants to buy 300 shares of TechM for the long term, and he is asking when is the right time to really enter the market. So, Sharmila, would you have a view on this?
Oh, yes, I think that we were speaking of pharma a little while earlier, and I think that, IT was the other sector which was for the longest time going through this period of consolidation, and there were a lot of uncertainties to do with the whole visa issue in the US, as well as the general business outlook, etc. And now we've seen the valuations actually come down quite a bit from what you gave entire IT as a sector. I think they've now sort of scaled down. And now I think, stocks are beginning to find their place and sort of move from those levels. It is an under-owned sector, and if you sort of feel that this is a sector where earnings will be on an even wicket, even if they are not spectacular, then I think, that is the reason why it is warranting attention. So within that basket, I do like a Tech Mahindra, but since markets are undergoing a correction and the sector is undergoing a correction because of the fact that, it was one of the last sectors that was bought into and people could be booking profit there, you could sort of wait to buy it on dips. But yes, I think that you can buy Tech Mahindra, and if you have a long-term view.
Okay, if you have a long-term view, then you could be buying Tech Mahindra. But before we wrap up on the show, I think we have time for one more query. I think Kamal writes to us from Punjab. He holds 5,000 shares of Hoodco at 91 bucks. Holding it for the last 3 months. Short-term investor wants to know whether or not to hold or to sell. Rajat, coming across to you.
I would say that the stock actually looks quite weak, at least in the near term, and chances are that it might fall further. But since he's holding it from 91, I would suggest that wait for a close below 75 to bail out of the stock. Otherwise, continue to hold it.
Okay, all right, so that's the view on Hutco. Let's just turn towards the markets, and let's thank our guests as well. Sharmila, thanks very much for joining in, and Rajat as well, in terms of taking us through all of those queries. Just wrapping up in terms of what we're seeing on the markets, it is turning out to be a down day really, which is coming in for the PSU banks, and maybe it is a combination of what's happening on the macros as well as the news with regards to the incremental piece of information on PNB, which is really hurting sentiment at this point. Like Nigel pointed out, there are a couple of stocks which are managing to really buck the trend. So that has to be something like even HUL and Reliance, which are up anywhere between 0.8 to 1%. Hero Moto, Bajaj Auto not doing too badly today. So watch out for these auto stocks. And Dr. Reddy's, which is really taking the cake today,